In the world of mixed martial arts, we see the meeting of all styles of combat. Most fighters enter the sport with a base discipline and learn other forms of combat over the course of their career. Though wrestling is shown to have the most success as a base combat discipline in producing champions, the fighters in this video traded their takedown skills for the knockout. These are 4 MMA fighters who competed in high-level wrestling but fell in love with striking. Number 1, Justin Geathje. The man nicknamed the Highlight is considered by many to be the most entertaining fighter of all time. 75% of his wins are by knockout, and even when Geathje reaches a decision, it is a bloodbath of violence. Through his first 10 fights in the UFC, Geathje attempted only 1 takedown. But despite this statistic, Justin Geathje was once a Division I All-American wrestler at the University of Northern Colorado.
Geathje, Northern Colorado, All-American, finishing 7th. Big win over Steve Brown there.
What's the difference? Nothing, man. Wrestling's wrestling. You gotta wrestle your game plan and just keep going.
Geathje stated in an interview that wrestling makes fights boring for fans, which is the reason he avoids it. The strategy has paid off for him, as he has collected 11 post-fight bonuses as a reward for his exciting style of fighting.
This is a completely different sport, obviously. Fighting from I think this is a whole different sport, and this is a sport I was born for.
You're a totally different guy. You're the wrestler who knocks people out. How does that keep happening?
Hey, well, all these wrestlers are tarnishing my sport. They need to quit doing that boring crap. So I'm here to show you how it's done. I'm going to come forward, and I'm only here to knock people out. I'm not here to submit nobody. I will not let Melvin out of this easy. If he wants to submit, Tabby's just going to be tapping. I'm not even going to be by him. If I knock him down, I'm going to walk away, let him stand up, and then I'm going to go after him again. That's how this fight's going to go.
Despite his change in style, Geathje still credits wrestling for his mentality and competition mindset, as he states in an interview in his old wrestling room.
What do you think the wrestling mat, the wrestling room has taught you as a competitor, but also as a professional athlete?
I think at the end of the day, this mat, there's nothing fake about it. You don't see in the midst of competition, it is one of the truest forms of competition next to MMA when we get to punch each other. And I learned that from early on. It's one-on-one, and it's you versus you at the end of the day. And so that it teaches you to overcome, be comfortable, with doubt, with reason, with unreasonable thoughts, and then you find comfort in the chaos in here. And that's what wrestling has taught me for a long time.
Well, it certainly served you well.
Number 2, Johnny Hendricks. When you think of Johnny Hendricks, you would likely visualize Big Rig throwing powerful hooks and overhands at a stunned opponent. Johnny Hendricks' reputation as a power puncher greatly outweighed that of a wrestler, but Hendricks is one of the most accomplished folk-style wrestlers to ever compete in martial arts. At Oklahoma State, Hendricks was a 3-time NCAA finalist and 2-time champion. He was also one of the most polarizing figures in his era of collegiate wrestling, and in an interview with Ariel Helwani, he mentions the difference between wrestling and MMA.
That's the difference, is that everything I do here is the same attitude that I had in wrestling. The only thing is that they're so dedicated on Iowa or Minnesota or whoever, right? And so whenever I'd go in there, I would try to beat them because I knew that most likely I'm going to face them more than once. Most of the time, some guys I've wrestled 4 or 5 times in my career, right? So you're sitting here going, okay, I'm going to wrestle you more than once, but if I can play mind games, if I can get you out of your element, then yes. So whenever I'd wrestle that way, they were like, oh, Johnny's a douchebag, Johnny's this, Johnny's this. So everybody on the internet started hating on me. And I'd be like, dude, what the hell? I did nothing. And I'd do fine interviews, but they would be like, oh, he's just putting on an act. So realistically, MMA has shown the world who I really am.
Number 3, Dan Henderson. Much like Johnny Hendricks, Dan Henderson was not famous as a fighter for his wrestling, but rather his powerful right hand coined the H-bomb. However, one of the greatest knockout artists in MMA was once an Olympic Greco-Roman wrestler. After wrestling in college at the Division I level at Arizona State, Henderson competed in the 1992 and 1996 Olympic Games and won bronze and silver at the Pan American Championships multiple times. Thanks to his natural power, Dan Henderson went from an Olympic-level wrestler to a knockout artist. And now for the 4th and final wrestler in the video. Yoel Romero is one of the most impressive athletes to enter mixed martial arts, and it is no surprise that his fighting style relies on explosive movements and long periods of inactivity, relying on his ability to take damage and finish a fight with one shot. Romero was a freestyle wrestler for Cuba before entering mixed martial arts. As a wrestler, Romero won a world title in 1999, as well as an Olympic silver in 2000. Romero lost in the world finals 2 times to Adamus Saitiev, one of the greatest Russian wrestlers of all time. Romero's phenomenal wrestling credentials did not translate seamlessly into MMA, as Romero has not been frequent with his takedown attempts throughout his career. Fans speculate as to the reasoning for Romero's lack of wrestling offense in the octagon, but a definite reason is that wrestling is extremely physically exhausting. Especially for an athlete as explosive as Romero, getting a takedown exerts too much energy to be sustainable throughout the course of a fight. Romero is known to fight at a very slow pace, and it is not worth gassing out attempting takedowns, especially when Romero does not have a very good top control. Romero's freestyle wrestling background does not have mat wrestling like American folk style, which emphasizes control time. Regardless, the Soldier of God is one of the most feared middleweights ever, with or without his wrestling.
Everything is possible in your life when you believe. When you believe, everything is possible. You have 2 hands